My name is Eric van der Kleij, and I am head of the Kickstart Accelerator's FinTech team here in Zurich. My background is entrepreneurial. I've started 3 companies. 2 are terrible, but one of them I was very lucky. It was a FinTech company called Adeptra. Well, actually, it didn't start off as Adeptra. It started off as a different company, and I had to figure out how to rebuild the business and the business model, do the pivot, all those things. And eventually, the company, we were very fortunate. We managed to sell it to FICO, the big American company. My wife likes to call it my 10-year overnight success. In addition to my personal private activities, I am consulting to the UK government. So I am chairman of the advisory board and special advisor for FinTech and blockchain for UK Trade and Investment's Global Entrepreneur Program. I've always believed that Switzerland stood a very good chance of becoming one of the leaders in FinTech. Very strong financial services, some deep specialization that's known worldwide. And actually, interestingly, quite a powerful brand, a brand of trust that really could be used well to help amplify the opportunity on a global basis. But we never really saw a concerted effort behind something that was designed to unlock all that potential until we saw the Kickstart Accelerator. And that was interesting to us because obviously in London, we had huge experience on the rise of FinTech, and we were part of helping create that at Level 39. And we had lots of visitors coming from Switzerland. And I always thought, the similarities between the 2 countries, we should do something more. So when the Kickstart Accelerator was launched with these, the 4 thematic focuses, and one very strong one being FinTech, I looked at it in more detail because figuring out whether or not it was going to be authentic was important. But as soon as we saw the partners involved, and that these partners were the leaders of Switzerland's financial services ecosystem, if you like, we thought, okay, that maybe is going to work out more interestingly. And this concept of how the program is building towards creating these proof of concepts shows the authenticity behind the offering, which is why we decided to get involved. They did ask me a couple of times, but it was worth pursuing because in the end, I'm very happy with our decision. While preparing for, firstly, the opportunity to come here and to do the Kickstarter, I did obviously ask all of my network connections in Switzerland, what's the real situation like on the ground? Can you really do it? Are there investors? Are the bigger corporates engaged? And it's interesting, there was a huge pent-up appetite for people to really want to get involved. And it felt like they just wanted something to signal that what they're doing is good and actually let's do more of it. So I experienced in London the Tech City initiative for the Prime Minister, which I was very proud to be part of, and then Level 39 as 2 major initiatives that helped amplify what these startups were doing anyway themselves. So I thought, okay, well, we can bring some of that experience to bear here in a marketplace that has some similarities. It could really work very well. So that was the background to us thinking about supporting the Kickstart Accelerator. Both the UK and Switzerland have already well-established traditional financial services economies, if you like. And Switzerland, of course, being, I suppose, acknowledged as one of the global leaders in things like wealth management, private banking. These are, and asset management, these are all sectors which are ready for transformation. In some cases, to make them more efficient, more transparent, and improve the established industry. And then in some cases, there's the revolution that's happening with things like robo-advisors and AI. And whether or not a robot or a machine can really do a better job in, say, supporting a human-based decision in wealth management. These are really interesting things. And then on top of that, we see the regulator here also thinking about how to help support and improve the financial services economy and the FinTech economy. So these are all stars that are aligning, and in some ways very similar to what we saw in the UK, but they do need to be unlocked. They need a catalyst to do it. The UK likes to try to pioneer being first at many things. So, the first to make crowdfunding legal, and, the first to launch the regulatory sandbox. And that's possibly because the regulator there has two roles. One is to protect the consumer and protect the industry. The other is the regulator has a role to help develop the industry. So it can do both, which is an interesting perspective. So I think that in some regards, that's ahead, but in terms of the depth of industry, I'd say Switzerland could be ahead in some fields. The times in my life when I've achieved the most is when I put myself in danger the most. And it is interesting because there's something about the human condition and performance in that I believe that we perform at our best when we challenge ourselves a little bit. The thing I'd like to see more of in Switzerland is slightly more unreasonable entrepreneurs. The plans that we see here are, I would say, quite safe, and they're quite realistic. That's good if you're an investor. So if I was the investor looking at a Swiss startup, I'd say, okay, their plans are realistic and relatively safe. But what we've come to learn now from our experience in the UK is actually the slightly unreasonable entrepreneur, slightly unreasonable but still very polite, is very important. But the unreasonably ambitious entrepreneur is worth encouraging because it's those that have to figure out, how can I, as a tiny company, really become a world leader in this new field? That takes an unreasonableness and a turning back on everything that, if you like, your education has told you you should be, which is, it's kind of our European thing, isn't it? Not be overly boastful, not be overly ambitious, and we all move forward together. But actually, for us to really have the capability of looking to examples of success, we do need people to be slightly more unreasonable. So I would encourage them to be a little more bold than I've seen, because some of the plans are amazing. But if they were more bold in their viral marketing strategies, for example, they might reach a bigger international audience. So I'm willing to encourage them to try that. And it's probably a nice thing for somebody like myself and my team to come here and do that, because we've hands-on experienced it in the UK, where we now have, as a result of that, some pretty amazing, fast-growing companies. If I was the CEO of one of the bigger banks, I would create a program where, rather than losing my best talent, I would create a program that allows them to go and try something and then still holds a place for them if they're really good here, and maybe a partnership or a POC. That's really bold and very, very clever, actually, if you think about it, because then the corporate retains the connection, sees the innovation, has access to that. It may be something they want to partner with, create a new product together. But it frees them up a little bit from the restrictions that corporates have to, because corporates have to deliver, the revenues and the targets, and they have to make their margins, etc. So creating mechanisms that allow that kind of spirit to flourish is important on two levels. One is that it enables the best talent to actually try and see what they can achieve. But it also culturally signals that it is okay to be a little bit more ambitious than you normally are. If we said here, okay, let's do this interview in 20 years' time, what will have changed? If we get it right, then the FinTech economy and the digital economy of Switzerland will have transformed in a way that it would be what the new bank would look like. Would be almost mostly a digital bank, but actually it would have found ways through technology to allow that human capability to be even more pervasive. And so that would be the real magic, a transformation of a digital economy that is very personal and human, so that we feel very comfortable, which is something quite traditional about the Swiss financial services, that personal service, the private wealth management. It should be that every single customer that was ever touched should feel they're the world's best private wealth manager, even if it is an individual supported by an array of the most amazing computer AI that's helping them give the best advice. You and I should still feel that we get that kind of service. That would be a worthwhile transformation. It actually could be world leading in a global sense. Switzerland could definitely continue to lead the world in that field. And actually, at the long time, alongside that, all of the things such as asset management and all the other industries that support it, the digital and creative industries as well, could also enhance along at the same time. So yeah, let's schedule doing that interview in 20 years' time and see if we were right. There's one characteristic that I think is very interesting here in Switzerland, that you have some of the biggest traditional rivals collaborating. Wow. You know, this is the word that I like to use for that is co-opetition. You know, I'm not sure if a word exists in Switzerland for that, but co-opetition is amazing. It is where you have the biggest rivals collaborating to develop their industry. When you see that, get behind it, because that means that this is a real step change taking place. When I say get behind it, there's a lot more than just the corporates. You need the regulator to get behind it, you need the entrepreneurs to get behind it, you need investors to get behind it. For example, the appetite to risk for earlier stage and growth stage investments, I think that could use some improvement. And in the UK, what we had to do was create policy to give bigger tax breaks for those that are prepared to invest in and take earlier stage risks. The thing is that the taxation system here is, actually not too bad for some people. So it's difficult to think about what the incentives might be, but that's what the policymakers need to be thinking about as well. How to pull just a few levers that send a signal that the huge potential investing capacity here gets behind this transformation and actually partners with this transformation to help catalyze and make it happen. One of our experiences in the UK has been working with the regulator to help develop the industry. And so the UK government and the regulator have been getting behind FinTech and to help to see what can be done to help develop it. Now, it's gone rather well with Project Innovate and now the regulatory sandbox, which is really quite bold. And what it means is that if you have a new idea and that you're not sure of the regulatory framework, you can come to the and propose it to go into a regulatory sandbox where the regulator and the startup or the entrepreneur decides, okay, we don't know exactly how it's going to work, but we will give it a limited permission to begin. But we know it's not perfect day one, but we'll watch it closely and work with you to develop best practice. That is profound in the regulatory sense because traditionally regulators have said, no, you have to make sure you meet all the regulations. And even if you look like you are, if you've got it wrong, we will punish you later. Now, historically, that has been the way that regulation has had to be because the things like the sandbox didn't exist. So the UK is keen to share with other countries the experience that we've had around the sandbox. And I know that the Swiss regulator is interested in this. We've heard that, which is very encouraging. And actually, watching the experience of how the UK goes with its regulatory sandbox could be very helpful in bringing out initiatives similar to that, maybe with the own Swiss slant to make it more relevant for what happens here in Switzerland. That could be a really interesting way for the Swiss establishment, if you like, to get behind the growth of this industry. Many of the world's top VCs have some sort of presence here in Switzerland, right? It's quite interesting to note that. But they don't have enough of their activity here, direct investing activity. They have more of their management, their asset management, and things like that. Because Switzerland has had a traditional attraction to a lot of those funds, which is great. But it means they're already here. Other countries would fight to get them here, right? So they're already here. So I think that taking that base platform and helping articulate how the ecosystem to support entrepreneurship is improving and shining a light on that so that these investors started to have more activity here. The VC investors, the growth phase investors, the angel investors, so that they could have a confidence that some of their capital could be deployed here as opposed to the asset management function. That's an opportunity worth unlocking because you already have a relationship. Just build on that. So I'd say it's well worth investing the time in that, but they're very discerning. It should be that if you're an entrepreneur in Switzerland, you have frictionless access to the UK and its amazing marketplace and its huge financial services industry, its investors. And it should be the same in retrospect, in that if you're a UK entrepreneur and you wanted to access continental European markets, you would perhaps choose Switzerland as one of the first places because the markets have been opened up and the free flow of ideas, technology, investors, talent between the two countries is enabled both at a regulatory level, but also at a very spiritual level by enthusiastic entrepreneurs who really want to work together. And that's quite interesting. That's the opportunity. And that's what I'm quite keen to get behind. That's why I feel very comfortable helping the UK develop its ecosystem and also sharing some of the experience that we've learned here in Switzerland. Because I think that the win-win for both could actually set a very interesting new standard for, across continental Europe.